history didn't end, it evolved. If you've already watched part 1 on World Discover Studio, you know how brutal, chaotic, and unpredictable Edinburgh's past has been. But what comes next? It's something no one expected. More happened in this period than most cities see in a millennium. It started with confidence. Under James IV, Edinburgh was a royal city with genuine European ambitions. James was cultured, intelligent, and popular. He built a new palace at Holyrood Palace, still standing today, intending it as a proper royal residence rather than a monastic guest house. He courted the arts, sponsored learning, and married Margaret Tudor, daughter of Henry VII of England. Scotland and England, for a moment, felt like they might actually get along. Then came Flodden. In 1513, James led a Scottish army into England in alliance with France and against the English king Henry VIII. The Battle of Flodden was a catastrophe. James IV was killed, along with an estimated 10,000 Scottish soldiers, among them much of the Scottish nobility. The king, his bishops, his knights, gone in a single afternoon. Edinburgh's response was immediate and telling. The citizens hastily constructed a new defensive wall, the Flodden Wall, running around the southern and eastern edges of the town. Much of it still survives. When you walk along the Vennel steps in Edinburgh today, you are walking along the Flodden Wall, built not in celebration, but in panic. The city grieved, but Flodden was not the worst thing the 16th century had in store for Edinburgh. That came in 1544. Henry VIII of England, furious that Scotland had refused to honor a marriage treaty between his son Edward and the infant Mary, Queen of Scots, sent the Earl of Hertford north with orders that left little to the imagination. He was told to burn Edinburgh, to put it to fire and sword. Hertford's army did exactly that. They marched in and burned the city for 3 days straight. The town, the Abbey of Holyrood, the palace, the port at Leith, all of it put to the torch. Contemporary accounts describe a smoke cloud visible for miles. This policy of deliberate destruction, intended to terrorize Scotland into submission, became known as the Rough Wooing. Henry VIII got nothing. Mary was spirited away to France. Scotland did not submit, but it took a generation to rebuild, and the scars were deep. The Reformation arrived in Scotland in the 1560s, and Edinburgh was at its center. The Protestant reformer John Knox preached from St. Giles Cathedral on the Royal Mile, a church that has stood on that site since at least the 12th century. He was passionate, uncompromising, and absolutely convinced that Scotland must abandon Catholicism. He got his way. In 1560, the Scottish Parliament, sitting in Edinburgh, formally established Protestantism as Scotland's national religion. Into this newly Protestant city, in 1561, arrived Mary, Queen of Scots, Catholic, French-educated, young, and walking into the worst possible situation a ruler could face. Mary had been Queen of France and Queen of Scotland by birth, and in the eyes of many Catholics, the rightful Queen of England as well. She was smart and politically capable, and in another time and place, she might have been a remarkable ruler. But Edinburgh in 1561 was not a forgiving place. Knox despised her. Protestant nobles distrusted her. The chain of events that unfolded from her arrival at Holyrood Palace reads like a tragedy that keeps getting darker. Her private secretary, David Rizzio, was murdered in front of her by a group of Protestant nobles, including her own husband, Lord Darnley, in 1566. She was pregnant at the time. Darnley himself was killed the following year in a mysterious explosion at Kirk O'Field, a house just outside the city walls. Mary then made what many saw as her most disastrous decision. She married the Earl of Bothwell, widely suspected of organizing Darnley's murder, just months later. Edinburgh turned against her. She was arrested, imprisoned, and forced to abdicate in favor of her infant son, James. After a failed escape and a final military defeat at the Battle of Langside, she fled to England and threw herself on the mercy of her cousin, Elizabeth I. She would spend the next 19 years as Elizabeth's prisoner before being executed in 1587. Edinburgh Castle became the last stand for her remaining loyalists in what was called the Lang Siege. a 4-year standoff that ended in 1573 when English cannons sent by Elizabeth finally battered the castle into submission. And yet, even amid all this turmoil, Edinburgh managed one of its most lasting achievements of the century. In 1583, the University of Edinburgh opened its doors. Founded by royal charter from King James VI, it was one of the earliest universities in Britain and would go on to become one of the most influential educational institutions in the world. With a new king on the throne and a new university open for business, Edinburgh might finally have been entering calmer waters. It wasn't. The 17th century would bring religious wars, occupation, plague, and a political union that Edinburgh neither wanted nor was ready for. In 1603, King James VI of Scotland inherited the English throne following the death of Elizabeth I, the union of the crowns. Scotland and England now shared a monarch, but they remained separate kingdoms with separate parliaments. James moved his court to London, promising to return to Scotland every 3 years. He returned once, in 1617. Edinburgh, which had been the undisputed capital of a royal court, suddenly found its king had moved 400 miles south. The city did not collapse, but it lost some of its political. The religious tensions that had been simmering in Scotland for decades boiled over in the 1630s. King Charles I, never the most politically astute of monarchs, attempted to impose Anglican-style worship on the staunchly Presbyterian Church of Scotland. The reaction in Edinburgh was immediate and furious. In 1637, when the new prayer book was read aloud at St. Giles Cathedral, the congregation rioted. According to tradition, possibly embellished over time, a woman named Jenny Geddes threw her folding stool at the bishop. What is not debatable is what followed. The bishops' wars, then the wider English Civil War, in which Scotland became entangled on multiple sides.